For 15 years, some of the most powerful people I've ever met paid me to take all of it away. Judges, lawyers, elected officials, CFOs, clergy, professional athletes, people who ran entire rooms for a living, people who made decisions that moved other people's lives without ever asking permission. And once a week or once a month, they knelt in front of me and asked me to strip all of that away. Before anything else happened, there was a ritual per se. We called it naughty confessions, and it wasn't optional. Not a fantasy rehearsed on the drive over, the actual thing, the real deal. The thing they had never said out loud to a partner, a friend, sometimes not even to themselves, until they were kneeling in a room before me, back towards me. This was years ago, mind you, back when kink still carried enough shame to end a career if it ever got out. Some confessions were about desire. Some had nothing to do with sex at all. A childhood trauma, a failure, a version of themselves buried so deeply, they'd started to forget it existed. I never knew which one was coming until they said it. Mind you, I was never a sadist. I didn't want to hurt anyone for its own sake. I needed a reason before I could give anyone what they were there for: discipline, punishment. And I needed a reason that made sense to me, not just to them. So the confession came first, every time, without exception. It wasn't a warm up, it was the work beginning. I was not a lifestyler. I was not a man hater looking for vindication. What I did know back then, without having language for it just yet, was compassion and deep empathy. Some of what people brought me struck me as strange, genuinely unusual, if I'm being honest about it. But strange was never the same thing as wrong. And I never believed I was doing something dark. I believed I was genuinely helping people. 15 years of sitting with what people were most afraid to say taught me something no book ever could. Shame does not check your title before it shows up. Every person who knelt before me carried some version of the same fear. That if this were seen, this truth, this rawness, it would cost them everything. That fear doesn't only belong to people who hire a dominatrix. It's one of the most universal things a human being can carry. Fear, shame, whether we want to admit it or not. One client called himself a pain slut. I adored him the way you would someone you witnessed closely over many years. So he had been born with a lottery ticket. His words, not mine. He had a loving family, real safety, nothing he'd ever had to survive. And he carried genuine shame over that ease. because he watched people close to him carry real pain and couldn't locate any version of it in his own life. He wasn't chasing sensation, he was searching for the full range of what it means to be human instead of just the comfortable and blessed self. Not just that part. I think about him often. People assume the service was all about control and punishment. And that distinction matters more than almost anything else I can tell you about that work. There's a difference between control and participation. And most people carry both inside their body without ever separating them. Control is not chosen. It's a shift in someone's tone, a change in the temperature of a room, and your nervous system responds before you've decided anything at all. Participation is different. There's agreement inside of it, clarity about what's happening and why. There is conscious awareness. Your body knows the difference immediately, long before the mind catches up. Most of the people I worked with had spent their entire lives running one long performance of control because somewhere underneath it, something had fractured, and control was what they'd built to hold the pieces together in public. That's the part not many understand about people who need to run every room they're in. It's rarely power, it's compensation. A person who trusts their own wholeness doesn't need to manage every variable in a room to feel safe inside it. Every session I ran was built on the opposite of that. Every limit and curiosity negotiated ahead of time. Nothing left to guess at. Sessions that built towards something and came down slowly afterward. Sometimes an hour of aftercare, sometimes much longer. Whatever someone actually needed instead of what looked adequate from the outside. That containment is what people need in order to stop performing. I got very good over those years at telling the difference between someone performing what they thought I wanted to hear and someone telling me the truth. It's a very specific skill. Hypervigilance studies a room and never fully trusts its own read. What I built was closer to discernment, a read I could actually rely on because I'd trained it deliberately. Session after session against real stakes. I still use it constantly now. Most people never get the chance to build that skill on purpose. They're too busy just trying to survive the room. What I actually watched more than anything was the moment someone stopped managing themselves entirely. I could feel it change in the space itself, not as an idea, but as an actual shift. The way you feel someone walk into a room already furious before they've said a word. The tightness would drop out of their shoulders. Their breath would register the change. And what was underneath was almost never chaos. It was usually something quiet, tender, unguarded. And for the first time in longer, they could say, present. I didn't have the words for any of this at the time. My awakening did not happen until 2017, a full decade into that work. And shamanic training came later still. Looking back now, with what I understand today, I recognize what that confession actually was. Something closer to retrieval than disclosure. Something in a person that isn't safe to exist doesn't disappear, it splits off and hides. And it wants, sometimes for years, for someone willing to witness it without flinching before it can come home. I couldn't have told you that then. I can tell you now. 15 years of witnessing that much shame changes you. I didn't understand how much until years later in my own healing, when I finally had room to feel everything I'd been carrying for everyone else the whole time. That's exactly why I understand integration from the inside out and not from a book or a certification. I earned it, one confession at a time, one experience at a time, for 15 years. You don't need 15 years behind closed doors to recognize any of this in your own life. You need one memory of managing someone's mood before you'd even registered your own. One memory of controlling every detail of a moment because some part of you no longer trusted that anything would hold otherwise. One moment that you believed you were beyond reproach and burned a bridge with someone who merely asked you for accountability. Those moments. Power in that room was never about who was on top, what collar or paddle was chosen. It was about who got to choose and whether choosing had ever actually been available to them before they walked through my door. I still watch for that same moment now in the work I do. The instant someone stops managing themselves and starts being real and starts taking responsibility of their life and the choices they make and not believing that they have to carry shame. You have choices. You can understand every word of this and still live entirely inside the pattern, unconscious. Because the body doesn't let go of something just because the mind finally named it correctly. It happens slower than that, one moment at a time. The instant you are offered something real and you manage to stay for it instead of flinching away. You not run from the power of choice, responsibility, change, evolution. So if any of this landed somewhere specific for you, my private sessions are built on this. And if you are interested in weaving energy healing, shadow integration, and exploration together, and find what it feels like to finally come home and be present, you'll find the link below. Until next time, namaste. I come back in